Here I am. I'm I'm in Lima, Peru, talking to all of you guys over there. It's pretty incredible and pretty neat.
That's really neat, Bob. Man, I am so excited to have you, Bob. You have absolutely no idea. And I have all week gotten bombarded by a lot of guys. Just they couldn't believe that we were going to get to have Bob on. And I know for you, you're like, oh, it's not a big deal, but for us, you're a legend, right? So in all these years, Bob, of me doing pools, I never thought in my wildest dream that I would ever be like, hey, let me call Bob and talk to Bob, right?
Well, I'm and I bothered to learn everything that a service tech knows because I actually rode with a service tech back in 1978. I spent 6 weeks every day riding with a guy that had 50 pools. And so I went to 50 pools a day. But he does. And then I started my career in the pool industry as a chemist service tech.
That's just amazing. Now, listen, Bob, I've talked to you in this last week, and some of the guys that I was talking to, I'm like, I need to do a podcast with Bob just to get your story because your story is amazing, and I'm okay if you let me share a couple of things that we've talked about. So,
okay, sure.
You were a 4-sport athlete going into college.
That's correct.
You go register in college, and then you transfer to the University of Florida, and you get drafted to go into the Army for the Vietnam War. And then on top of that, you become a Green Beret.
That's correct. So what happened was they had the draft in those days, and they were drafting a lot of people right out of high school that didn't go to college or college dropouts. And what happened was when I graduated from high school, I was going to go to University of Florida and play football. And they said, well, you have to, I went to a junior college in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale, and I didn't like the program and I didn't like the instructor, so I dropped. And a month or so later, I went to University of Florida. I got my schedule, got an apartment, got my ID. My mom called and said, you got a letter here from the Selective Service. And I said, well, it's a mistake. I'm a student. So I went down with the letter to the Selective Service office, and we talked for a minute. The guy came back. He said, didn't you go to junior college a few months ago? And I said, yeah. And I said, well, you dropped out. And I said, well, yeah, but I'm here now. He said, you're a college dropout. You're drafted.
And so you went to Vietnam in 65, 66, was it? Guys, he went to
Green Beret, Vietnam. But I was also a sniper. And so I did long range recon, and I was a sniper.
Oh man, that's just amazing. What a story. So we have got to do a podcast. And guys, we're going to have Bob join us on the 16th or 17th. I don't remember. And then once a month, they'll come on the podcast and you guys will be able to call and ask some questions. So Bob, just because we're limited on time with Instagram, I want to make sure that we talk about a couple of things. I want to ask you a couple of questions on water chemistry and stuff like that. But the first thing that I wanted to do, just to make sure that we talked about it, is that you have a certification program that is for water chemistry for the residential. It really focuses on us, the pool guys, for the residential side. And I have one of the guys that's on with us, John from JJ Flawless, on our podcast. And when he heard that I had you on, he went nuts because he took your certification. And he just raved about it, how it was the first certification that he was able to take. And as soon as he was done with it, he was able to go back and to do his pools the next day. And he was automatically able to Yes, Mama Bear is on there, but she took the class as well. She just sent the little shout out on the screen. She took the class with John. But their big thing was that they were able to implement right away everything that they learned. And so they were just saying it's the first course that we're taking that, allows us to take all that knowledge and put it into play right the next day.
We've been doing this course now for I don't know, a year and a half or 2 years. But the biggest compliment that I get is that people finish the class and they're all raving about what they learned in the class. And I was a CPO instructor for 21 years, and that never happened to me. And so I knew I was on the right track, but one of the biggest compliments I got, which I repeat a few times, but a service guy in Northern California who I've known for a long time, we were in a meeting of the Recreational Water Quality Committee, and he stood up and said, I got a copy of Bob's book and took his class, and in March at the Western Pool and Spa Show, and from March to July, here's what happened. I have 238 pools on service. I have 6 guys working for me. And he said, from March to July, we have saved $30,000. And we used to have 20% of our pools that were problem pools. We have no more problem pools. And this was unannounced, and it absolutely blew me away.
Incredible. And I sit here and I go, hey, it's not fair that class wasn't around when I started, because let me tell you, Bob, I learned some crazy stuff that was passed on from guy to guy that I think I don't confess a lot of things to people of all the things that because when you really don't have a structured class like that, you learn from other pool guys that kind of teach you, but you know how everything is. It gets watered down by the time.
Well, yeah, it gets repeated and watered down, and it's easy to go into a seminar on one aspect of water chemistry and have a guy tell you, oh, it's okay to keep a high cyanuric acid and a high pH. And then you go out and try it and it doesn't work, and you screw up a bunch of pools and you go back to doing what you were doing. And we have a better way and a method, and it just involves a slight adjustment to what you're already doing. And if you're using borate, it doesn't involve buying another chemical. And if you're not using borate, it involves adding borate, but just making an adjustment to everything else of how you do it. So it's not anything new and unusual. It's stuff you're already doing. We're just changing the way you do it.
Right. And guys, I see in the comments that already a couple of you are asking when's the next class. We're going to talk about that in a second, and we're going to talk about it. But for those that are listening, Bob, those that are going to take the course or interested in taking the course, what is it specifically that you kind of teach in that class that everybody just comes away with?
Well, we talk about all of the current things about using chlorine generators, the pros and the cons. We talk about bromine. We talk about ozone. We talk about UV. We talk about AOP and free radicals and all of those kinds of things. We talk about water balance a lot. But the last thing that we talk about in hour 7 is a method for service techs to take care of a pool. And it's not about cleaning the skimmer baskets or pump strainer baskets. It's about the chemistry. And we teach a method of taking care of a pool that makes it easy for you to understand and to know exactly what you should be doing in the pool. And the problem is that you don't know exactly what to do now, even if you've been around for a long time. And the reason starts with what used to be NSPI and then became APSB, and now it's PHTA. They're standards, the guidelines. And for instance, the guideline for pH says that the minimum pH is 7.2, ideal 7.4 to 7.6, and maximum 7.8. So without getting into all the rest of the other things, tell me what pH 7.3 is. Is that okay? Is is higher than minimum but lower than ideal. What should I do?
Right.
Okay. And each one of the standards is the same way. And so you've got this minimum, ideal, and maximum for everything. And the range is so broad that you can be in that range and still have corrosive water, scale forming water, and all kinds of other problems. And yet you're within the standards. So the first thing that I did was I decided to make a target for every single water condition. And it's one number.
Uh-huh.
And the advantage to doing that is that the target for pH is 7.5. So no matter what else happens, if you go to the pool and to measure the pH, if it's not 7.5, then it's either above or below and you're not on the target. And you know what to do. At 7.3, you're scratching your head saying, well, I don't know if I should do something or not. But if the target's 7.5, what is 7.3? Okay.
Right.
So
Right.
everything is the same way. Alkalinity, we set a target of 90. So if you go in and your alkalinity is 120, it's wrong.
Right.
And so that's the point. We first establish a target for everything and then set maximums. And then what we want to do is the goal in water keeping is to make a stable set of conditions. So the idea is that things change in the pool, but the more we can make them so they don't change, the less work we have to do to maintain it. So what we do is there are buffers in the water, and the buffers are, I'm sorry, we have.
It's okay. It's okay.
but I'm a real live person, not a bot.
Right.
So
it's okay.
Somebody rang the doorbell and they go nuts.
Mine do that too. I normally tell my kids, please do not have anybody come to the door.
Yep.
So
I gave everybody, the message not to, but the doorbell just rang. Anyway, so the next thing we do then is we want to make the pool stable. So there are 3 buffers in the pool. Alkalinity and cyanuric acid are buffers that keep the pH from going down. We can add a 3rd buffer called borate to the pool, and that keeps the pH from going up. So we have a system then, if they're in the right range, we have a system that keeps the pH from going up or down, and we got the right alkalinity. So now we've got pH and alkalinity that's not changing.
Yes.
Then we set, and the cyanuric acid is set at 50 parts per million. And that's a good buffer at that level. So at that level, we can, if we use liquid chlorine, it will not contribute to cyanuric acid. And so because it doesn't contribute to cyanuric acid, we don't have to add more chlorine. You see, as cyanuric acid goes up, because it slows down the kill rate, we have to add more chlorine to keep the water safe. So if you're using tabs, when the cyanuric acid goes up, you have to add more chlorine so you can have safe water. And if you don't, you'll end up with growing algae in the pool. So we keep that stable. The cyanuric acid is not going to move. And then people say, well, if I add liquid chlorine, isn't the pH going to go up? And 10 years ago, I would have agreed with you, but today I don't. And the reason is that nobody thought all the way through what happens when we put liquid chlorine in the pool. And what happens is this: liquid chlorine, as you may know, has a pH of about 11 or maybe 12. And it makes sodium hydroxide when you put it in the pool. And it also makes hypochlorous acid. So it makes the free form of chlorine in water, and it makes sodium hydroxide, which is a hydroxide. It's a high pH. So the pH goes up. But now we have an HOCl in the water. And tomorrow, the sunlight and algae and bacteria are going to start working on the HOCl, and it's going to degrade. And when it does, it loses in oxygen, and it becomes HCl. HCl is hydrochloric acid, or as you know it, muriatic acid.
Right.
And so we make sodium hydroxide today we make hydrochloric acid tomorrow and they cancel each other out. And so using liquid chlorine does not raise the pH in your pool. And for 40 years, people believed that it did. And people still believe it does. It does not raise pH when you use liquid chlorine. So what did we just create? We created stable pH, cyanuric acid not moving, and the pH not going up because of liquid chlorine. So what's going to move in the pool? The only thing that's going to change in the pool then is during the week, the pH is going to rise a little bit due to CO2 off gassing. And so it may go up a little bit, so you need a few ounces of acid maybe. But you don't have trichlor, it's not pulling down the pH and alkalinity and raising the cyanuric acid. And then the chlorine is going to be used, but it's not going to increase the pH or anything, so you'll need a little more chlorine. And so you add a little chlorine, a little acid, do your regular jobs, and you're done. And that's the way we made the pool. We made it stable. And so it doesn't change from week to week. And it even is forgiving. If you don't do something, it'll still be okay.
It'll still be okay.
The only problem is that it's difficult to add enough chlorine in the pool to last for a week. And the reason is this. In an outdoor pool with no structures around it to be in the shade, in the summertime, you will lose between 1 part and 1.5 parts per million of chlorine. Even with cyanuric acid in it, you'll lose about 1 to 1.5 parts per million per day of chlorine. So in a week, you're going to need 10 parts per million of chlorine or more, depending on how often they use the pool. So if you're going to need that, you can't come in on a 1 call a week and add 12 or 14 parts per million of chlorine. You can't do that. So what people have been very successful with doing, instead of using the tabs, is to get a peristaltic pump. And there's a few good brands out there. There's Stenner and Rollichem and those guys. And you get one of their little peristaltic pumps and a small container for acid, and then you calculate how much chlorine you're using over a period of a week. And if you find out you're using a gallon a week, then you want to put into the pool 1/7 of a gallon. And you set up the Rollichem or the peristaltic pump to pump in 1/7 of a gallon every day. And it just comes on every day and does it. And even if you don't have records to go back on to look it up, what you can do is you can calculate from the 1 part per million per week or per day. You can put in 1 part per million of chlorine per week. And you can do that by calculating how much chlorine you need for 1 part per million. And I happen to know what that is. It's 10.78 ounces, fluid ounces of liquid chlorine in 10,000 gallons makes 1 part per million. So what you can do then, if it's a 15,000 gallon pool, is add about 15 ounces per day, which will give you 1 part per million of chlorine going into the pool every day. And so when you come, you can put in 5 or 6 parts per million. Let the pump in a part per million per day. When you come back the next week, you're still going to have a few parts per million of chlorine in the pool. This method also, when you do it at this way, the chlorine level that we recommend is not 2 to 4 parts per million of chlorine. That doesn't always work. And it's a standard. It says the chlorine level should be between 2 and 4 parts per million of chlorine. And I can prove to you that doesn't work. So what we want to do is make the chlorine level in the water a percentage of the cyanuric acid.
Okay.
And there's 2 numbers you need to know. One is that free chlorine should be 7.5% of the cyanuric acid level. And so at 50 parts per million of cyanuric acid, it's almost 4 parts per million of chlorine. And if you got 100 parts per million of chlorine of cyanuric acid in the water, you need 7.5 parts per million of chlorine. And I can prove it. And so the other thing that you can do, which we recommend, you put borate in the water. And as I've said, it keeps the pH from going up, but it has another unusual property. When you put 50 parts per million of borate in the pool, it acts as an algistat. And what that means is that it prevents algae but doesn't kill it. And so if we prevent the algae, we won't need as much chlorine. And since we don't need as much chlorine, we can reduce the 7.5% to 5%. So you put borate in the pool, and by the way, you only have to put borate in the pool once. It's not a weekly thing. It's not something, you check it once a month, and if it's down to 30, add some more. And it's only going to be that way if you've lost some water. If you haven't lost any water, it's going to still be at 50. So then you only need 5% of cyanuric acid. So if you have 50 parts per million of chlorine in the pool, you need 2.5 parts per million. And the great thing about doing this is that you don't need a weekly shock. You don't need an algicide. You don't need a phosphate remover. You don't need a separate oxidizer. You don't need all those expensive specialty chemicals that you're buying. You don't need them. And the pool stores hate me. You know, they make their money selling those things. And you guys, if you do this method, you will absolutely save money, not have problems, and I'm not selling you anything. I don't make a penny for any chemicals you buy. I don't have anything you can buy except a book and a certification, and that's it. And I have a couple of apps which make life easier for you, but that's it. I don't have anything. So I'm giving you what it's taken me 47 years to figure out. And all of this, there are 2 books you need to consider buying. And one is the biggest book that we have distributed. I say we because it was we and now it's not, but I own it all. But the biggest book that we've had success with is called Pool Chemistry for Service Techs.
Great book.
For Service Pros, I'm sorry, Service Pros. And it costs $14.95 on Amazon as an ebook or as a print copy. And it's only 28 pages. And it goes through specifically what I just told you. And we have given away or sold more than 12,000 copies of that book. And there's for service techs. So 12,000 service techs have this book, and nobody's calling me saying it doesn't work. Okay? You know, if you told somebody to do something and 12,000 people did it, your phone would be ringing off the hook.
If it didn't.
and you'd be getting thousands of messages. I don't get anybody telling me that it's not working. Okay? So I know it works. And when I developed it, I printed it out, gave it to some service pros, and said, what do you think of this? And they said, well, I don't have time for that. So why don't you do one pool and see if you like it? And let me know. And every single one of them along the line said, you know, I tried this on my own pool or a friend of mine's pool, and it was so good I switched them all. And, you know, and the borate thing, the whole new borate thing, I started it. It's been used for years, but I started it. The original patent on using borate for pools was in 1984. So it's been around forever. But nobody was promoting it and popularizing it. And I started popularizing it about 3 years ago. And it got so big in California that the manufacturer of borate called me about 6 months ago. And he said, do you know why our sales of borate in California, and this is not just for pools, this is their total sales for borate in the state of California are up 250%. And I said, I know exactly why. I started it.
And let me tell
And
you,
he said, is there anything we could do for you? Could we buy you a house?
and let me tell you, there's a guy online that is a true believer of the borates, and Greg the Beard Man. And so John and I did an Instagram live that was 2 episodes, the borates. And so we broke it down into 2, and I've never used them before. They sent me your material. I studied your 14 pages on the borates, and I thought I was ready for it. And I made a couple calls, and I called John, and I called Greg, and I called, the guys that were using the borates and kind of trying to answer all these questions. And somebody here from Dallas that was using it, used it for 8 years. And so my thing was, I have to test it, right? So we do the lives. It's 2 of the big lives. And I get one of the guys from here from Dylan's pool, and we go out and we put it in his pool, and it was instant. I mean, I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as we added those borates into the pool, the water just changed. And so during that time, we were installing some new equipment at his house. So he wanted to learn how to install the equipment. So I said, I'm going to teach you. You're going to do all the work. And that pool was off for about 30 hours, had 8 people swimming in it, and the water was just crystal clear. It was just amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And there are 4 borate products that you can add to the pool, but the one that I recommend is called Boric Acid.
Yes, that's the one.
And the reason is that when you add it, and all of them do the same thing. Once they're in the water, they're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
But boric acid, you can put it in and you're done. And all the rest of the products, when you put them in the water, you have to readjust the pH and the alkalinity because it raises them up, both of them very high. If you use sodium tetraborate penhydrate, it'll raise the pH up of the pool to 9. And then it will increase total alkalinity by 115 parts per million.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And so you have to add a lot of acid to get those back down. So, and once you get them back down, then the pH will stay pretty stable. But it's an involved process, whereas boric acid, you can throw it in the pool, move it around with a brush, or as John Stankus did, he uses a hammerhead without the bag.
Yes,
he throws the stuff in the pool, runs over it with the hammerhead that's dissolved. It's crazy.
Yes, that's great. So what the name of your certification, Bob?
All right, it's called Pool Chemistry Certification -Residential.
Okay.
And the reason that we've chosen that name is, first of all, it's a pool chemistry only class. It's not a CPO class. It teaches chemistry. And secondly, it is for residential pools. It is not for commercial pools. And frankly, everything could be used that's in that book or in what we teach. It could be used in a commercial pool except for the chlorine and oxidation. And in a residential swimming pool, we are concerned about algae and bacteria. In a commercial pool, we're concerned about chloramines and ammonia and all that other junk that gets in there, sunblock and all that kind of stuff that gets in there. So it requires, and the number of bathers and stuff that get in there, we're concerned about keeping an amount of chlorine in there that's enough to overcome all the contamination all the time. So it is for residential. We didn't want to compete with the CPO course or any other FPO or PPO courses or anything. So we made our own thing. And the reason we made our own thing is that Greg Garrett, who passed away a year ago, he and I started Pool Chemistry Training Institute. But I wrote the training manuals for IPSA, and Greg had been using my manuals to teach his classes at the National Plasters Council for years. And we got together about 2.5 years ago, and we got to talking, and I said, there are no courses out there in pool chemistry. There's only seminars and some papers you can read. There's no formal chemistry course out there. And so I said, well, why don't we make one? The IPSA has the 2 books. We can use those books. We'll make a course, and IPSA can implement it, and it'll be IPSA certified.
Mhm.
And so we approached IPSA on it, told them we'd do all the work, and all they had to do was implement it. And they hemmed and hawed, and 4 months later, they came around and said, we're not sure we want to do it. And we said, well, we'll see you later. And Greg said, what are we going to do? I said, we're going to do it ourselves. And he was like, what? And I said, you know, we can't use the IPSA books, but I could write a new one. So I sat down, this was in April, maybe March, the end of March, maybe. From March to July, I wrote a 226-page chemistry book. And then I did all of the pagination and layout and diagrams and illustrations are all in there. And I did all of those except for a few of the cartoons.
Yeah.
So I did the entire book. It goes from me to the printer. Okay. I don't have an editor. I don't have anybody. I write it, I edit it, I publish it, I do it. And it's all done. So in July, I made the book. And then I turned around and made, in about 2 weeks, I made the PowerPoint presentation for the course.
Right.
And we started Pool Chemistry Training Institute to certify and train service techs in residential pool chemistry. And Greg was going to be, my job was to write the books, use the 2 books that I wrote, and set up the curriculum in the course, and set up the website and do it all. And then Greg was going to promote it and give classes because he was already giving 52 classes a year for NPC. And he was just going to add it as an extra day onto the courses he was doing and give 50 courses. And then we were going to add instructors and be just like CPO and have instructors teaching for us. And then 13 months ago, Greg died. And I'm in Lima, Peru. And I love chemistry and I love talking, but I don't like selling. And I know how to market, but I don't know how to market in this environment of, social media and stuff. Obviously, this is my first Instagram presentation. So, I don't know how to use the things we have. So I need somebody to help me market this.
Yeah.
And it's the perfect thing for any service tech. And they can spend $300 and get certified for 3 years. And then they can take an online course and get certified for 3 more.
Okay. So they do that and get 3 more. Okay.
Yes. So they can. But they'll have to probably pay $200 and do an online course and get certified for 3 more.
That's
But
right.
you do get a certificate, you get a patch, you get all these things to have and show people that you know what you're doing. And the biggest part of it is you're going to start implementing them tomorrow, and you're going to start saving money. And almost every guy that I talk to, including the 2 people that you've been talking to, have come along and said, I'm saving about 30% on my chlorine bill.
Yeah.
30%. How big is that? How much money are you spending every month on chlorine? And how would you like to save 30%? Especially now that tabs are going to go through the roof on expenses.
Yeah. And I know that Zach is listening. And so Zach is with us on the podcast. And Zach is just our brain guy and always is looking from the standpoint. So Zach, I'm going to challenge you that as soon as this is over, I want you to do your math and tell me and call me what your 30% savings is. Because that's huge. That's huge. So the next class is going to be October 31st. It's going to be a virtual class, right? Yes. And you're going to teach the class.
Listen, because of you and I sat down and talked, and you said we need a class, and I said, okay, let's have one. So I am giving a special class for your followers, for you guys.
Okay.
And I'm going to give it. And I'm going to give it. I'm the guy that wrote the book, and I'm giving it.
and I told you as soon as you do it, I'm the first one to sign up. And I don't do that many pools anymore, but I'm taking that class. So the class is October 31st. It's a virtual class. It's a Saturday. And then, guys, what we're going to do is Bob in the next day or 2 is going to set up the site where we can actually register for the course. So what I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm going to do a post. I might even do it tonight. I'll do a post so you have the information for it. And then what will happen is if you're interested, hit me and shoot me a DM. I'll write down your name. And as soon as Bob sets up that platform for you to be able to register, I will send you the link first before it gets posted anywhere else. And then there's a couple guys that I was already talking to, Bob, that wanted to repost that. So they were like, "Oh, send us the post and we'll repost it and we'll do all that."
A couple of things. First of all, the class requires that you have both books.
Okay.
And you can buy both books directly from Amazon. And we could perhaps give you a link, but it's not important. If you type in pool chemistry for service pros or pool chemistry for residential pools, it will take you where all 5 books are for sale. But you can order an ebook or a print copy, and they will print you a copy and mail it to you, and you have it in a couple of days. But you have to have both books to take the class. And so what you'll do is you'll pay $250 to take the class, and then you have to buy the books.
The 2 books.
And the books cost, I think if you buy the ebooks, they're $50, and if you buy the print copy, they're $15 more.
Okay.
So
and we'll post all that.
Okay, but they do have to have the books to take the class, because if you don't, you'll be lost and you won't be able to take the exam. And there is an exam. There's a 50-question exam that you have 90 minutes to complete. And if you complete it, because it's online, the minute you complete it, you can download a PDF for your certificate of achievement. So you get a certificate of achievement, and then you can print it on some nice paper and hang it on your wall or frame it or whatever, show your friends or whatever.
What I need is the patch, because I already got like 2 or 3 messages from guys showing me their patches. Full Guardians online sent me his patch. Yeah. And so
the patches are iron-on, by the way. And I don't know that everybody knows that. I saw some guy that sewed one on, and I said, we used an industrial strength iron-on, and you put that baby on there and you'll tear the shirt up before you get it off of it. So, because I didn't think these guys wanted to start sewing patches on.
I do have 2 water chemistry questions for you.
Go.
Okay. So I started doing pools probably like 15 years, and I'm still trying to figure this one out and see if it's true or not. So, because the guy that kind of taught me used to tease me a lot about water chemistry, right? Because he was having fun at my expense. And so one of the things that he told me was that if I added acid in a line, it would only do pH. But if I did a circle, I would do pH and alkalinity. And I was talking to John from JJ Flawless today asking about it. And he was saying, I'm not going to tell you, you're going to have to ask Bob. So for 15 years, I don't know if the guy was making fun of me and thinking and laughing I sent him off to do pools and he's doing circles, or whether it's true or not.
It is not true, period. No matter how you add acid to the water, it does exactly the same thing. Whether you put it in around the perimeter or you pour it in one spot, it all does the same thing. And in fact, it's probably more dangerous to stand in one spot and pour it, because acid is heavier than water, and it probably goes straight to the bottom and starts etching the plaster. So there is no difference in the end. And they have proven this. Actually, a company called On Balance put a number of pH probes in the pool and then did that. And they did it by pouring acid with some dye in it so they could see where it went. And they poured the exact same amount in, the exact same amount of time. And when it was all said and done, the pH and alkalinity were identical. It does not matter how you put it in there.
I think he suckered me, and I'm going to call him as soon as we hang up.
And I get that question so much that I even made a cartoon of it and put it in my book.
Did you really?
I have a cartoon, and it shows a guy, because it's a cartoon, it shows a guy pouring acid from a hot air balloon in a straight line into the pool. and then the other cartoon is a guy running around the pool pouring the acid in. And then down at the bottom of both of them, it says, no matter how you do it, it all does the same thing.
I think I got suckered big time for like
But
15 years.
I know the logic for it.
Uh-huh.
And the logic is this: if you get the pH down in the pool
Uh-huh.
to 4.5, you
Mhm.
wipe out the alkalinity.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you zero out alkalinity when you get to 4. So the theory was that when you pour acid in one spot, it makes this kind of a sphere or bulb of acid in the water. And
Uh-huh.
within that sphere, the pH is less than 4.5. So you wipe out the alkalinity in that 4.5.
Mhm.
In that sphere, you wipe out the alkalinity, and then it
Right.
mixes with the rest of the pool, and so it lowers the alkalinity. And that's the theory of it, but it's not what really happens. And I have a T-shirt that I wore for a while, and when I gave seminars, and not classes but seminars, and the T-shirt said, "Science doesn't care what you think." And that almost became my motto. I have guys telling me about something. I go, I don't care what you think. This is the science.
That's awesome. I think I might need to print some of those. That's great.
And
All right.
so, I've been doing this a long time. I got all the right answers. I don't work for a chemical company. I've been
Mhm.
independent for 27 years. And I just seek the truth and then put it and figure it all out and then put it in a form that you guys can use it.
So you don't work for a chemical company, but you built one years ago. But I'm not going to tell everybody.
I've owned
We're
2
gonna,
chemical companies.
so,
If you've ever heard of Rhubarb, which started
uh-huh.
in 1972, I used to own that with Joe Arbacheski, and the name Rhubarb actually came from ROB from Robert and
Uh-huh.
ARB from Joe Arbacheski. That's how we got Rhubarb. So then, 5 years later, in 1977, I moved to Los Angeles, found an investor, and started Leisure Time Chemical. And
Right.
8 years later, I sold Leisure Time Chemical for millions of dollars and retired.
Yeah,
And
retired.
I did. And 2.5 weeks later, I started Service Industry News. So my retirement lasted 2 weeks. And I started Service Industry News, and I owned that for 6 years with David Dickman. And then after that, I went to work for Dell Industries as their
Uh-huh.
VP of technology, making ozone. And then about a year later, I went to work for Leslie's,
Mhm.
and I was their director of technical director for 7 years with Leslie's. And I
Mhm.
set up their safety program. I reformulated or formulated new products, a total of 12 products for them. I wrote their owner's manual for pools. I registered all of their pesticides with EPA and set up their safety and training programs. We did videos, and I wrote 26 white papers for them. And so I set up their program. And then we had the earthquake. In 1994, we had the Northridge earthquake.
I was
and
there.
A year later, I moved to Georgia and became a consultant. So I'm out of here. that was too close. The Northridge earthquake was 1 mile away from Leslie's main office.
Oh, wow.
And I said, I'm not doing this. And
No.
so I didn't have any reason to. I didn't need the money to work. So I just was working. And I told my wife at the time, I said, we don't need to be here.
Mhm.
And California is kind of getting expensive and run over. And there was all the problems California was having. And I thought, let's get out of here. And so we moved to a little town of 2,000 people in Jasper, Georgia, and just kind of played with with being a consultant. And since I started doing that, I've been working about 80-hour weeks. And then 10 years ago, I moved to Lima, Peru, and married a Peruvian woman. And
if she's there, you tell her thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I've taken so much of your time this week, and I've meant to tell you to tell her that. So tell her thank you.
I've semi-retired here, and instead of working 80 hours a week, I'm only working 60 now. So anyway, I just, my life is water and pools, and I talk to people and write stuff and do things all day long. I've got 5 apps that I have written that you can buy for your phone that make your jobs easier. I am just about to release another app in about a week that is going to be the killer app of all.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it is. It's called the pH Alkalinity Adjustment Tool. And if you want to adjust
alkalinity,
pH and alkalinity, and you put in the water conditions, you put in the current pH and the current alkalinity, and then you put in what you want the pH to be and what you want the alkalinity to be, and it tells you exactly what you need to do it. And it is killer.
So here, I'm going to do what my kids do.
The story of it is that I have an app now called the Pool Acid Dose Calculator, and it's only for lowering pH and alkalinity for acid, but it never worked the other. It never worked the other way.
The other way,
but
yeah.
That original pH, Pool Acid Dose Calculator took me 13 years to develop.
I couldn't believe that when you told me
13 years. And now this version, this super version of that, called the pH Alkalinity Adjustment Tool, took 5 more years. And so what I'm going to publish next week is the result of 18 years of my work. And it is so dead on accurate that I don't doubt that all of the companies that have an app that calculate pH and alkalinity, I don't doubt that they're going to want to buy it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Nobody has it.
No.
And it's my intellectual property. And I can tell you, frankly, because I looked, every analyzer out there is wrong when you try to adjust pH and alkalinity. They're all of them wrong. And this is the only thing that's right.
That's just a game changer right there. Yep, that's a game changer.
It is. So anyway, I just got a message this morning from my programmer in India, and he is sending me build number 16 for beta test. And as soon as I approve it, he should have all of the bugs worked out of it, and we can give it to Apple first. And then after it's been at Apple for about a few days, we can work on the Android one, and about a week later we can put it in Android. Yes.
You guys are going to want to watch that. So, guys, we're starting to run out of time, but I want to do just a quick recap for you guys on the certification. So, the pool chemistry certification for the residential, Bob is going to do the training, and that's October 31st. It's going to be online. We're going to post it. So if you're interested, send me a DM. I'll write your name down as soon as we have it set. Bob has it set up so that he can start registering people. I'll send that to you so that you guys can start to register. And it's a certification for water chemistry for residential, which is what our page is about, right? And the guys that we talk to all the time, it's more the residential guys and stuff like that. So, so I just wanted to do a quick recap. Bob, I want to thank you for your time. I know that I've taken a lot of time, but I've enjoyed the stories. And I'm super excited that you're going to be with us on the podcast. And I know you have the first one, the 16th or 17th. And then once a month you'll come on and we'll talk a little pool talk.
Yeah, we're gonna do it once a month with you guys and try to set it up where it's always the same time. So it's like a TV show. You turn it on at 8 o'clock on Wednesday night and watch it.
And guys, for you out there that we use Podbean and you can actually call. So when you call in, you're actually going to be asking Bob your water chemistry question, and he's going to be able to answer that question. So Bob, so I'm going to post that. I'm actually going to post it today. And then I will call you tomorrow and we'll talk about once you have that link for everybody to register. And that's going to be October 31st. It's an 8-hour class, right?
It is 8 hours. And
Okay.
we take about a half an hour break for lunch. And it could be less depending on how long it takes for you to complete the exam. Some people take tests in a hurry and they know their stuff and they can be done in 20 or 25 minutes. Some people it's going to take 90. So it just depends.
So the big one here, guys, and why it's a big deal to me is it's actual Bob that's going to do the training class and not some other instructor. So if you want to get the class directly from Bob, that's the class that you're going to want to get. So Bob, I want to thank you. Thank the wife for letting me steal you so much this week. I appreciate that. And then we'll definitely talk soon.
All right. Well, listen, this inaugural Instagram has been pretty cool. I liked it. So
I like it too.
We can do it again.
I was honored that I was able to get #1. So that was big. I can have something to brag about. So
all right, cool.
Hey, all right. So I'll talk to you soon, Bob. All right.
See you guys
Take care,
later.
guys. We'll catch you next week, and we'll catch you on Friday on the podcast. All right. Bye, guys.